Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready to bend some rules today? We're taking a deep dive into Tim Ferriss's The 4-Hour Workweek.
Oh, a classic.
It is, and you know we love to dissect these influential books. This one's your blueprint to ditching that 9 to 5, maybe even earlier than you thought.
Hmm.
What really grabbed me, no surprise, the idea of designing a life with more freedom. And who doesn't want that?
Right. It's a pretty powerful concept, and Ferriss doesn't mess around.
Exactly. We're talking less about retiring at 65 and more about mini retirement sprinkled throughout your life. Imagine travel, passions, all that good stuff without waiting for, well, actual retirement.
And it's not just about taking breaks. Ferriss challenges the whole traditional work model, doesn't he?
Totally. He really pushes you to question those assumptions. Like, why does it have to be this way? Can we achieve more by doing less, but smarter?
Which is a question a lot of people are asking these
For
days.
sure. Okay, so before we get ahead of ourselves, let's lay the groundwork. What's the core message of the 4-Hour Workweek?
It's all about intentional living, right? Taking control of your time and structuring your life around what truly matters to you. Ferriss provides a framework and the tools to help you escape that feeling of being trapped in the rat race.
Lifestyle design, he calls it, right? Like you're the architect of your own life. Sounds pretty good,
Yeah.
but how do we actually do that? Where do we start?
Well, he introduces a lot of interesting concepts, but one of the key principles is the Pareto principle, also known as the 80-20 rule.
Okay, 80-20 rule. I've definitely heard of it, but to be honest, I could use a little refresher. What's the gist?
Basically, it's the idea that 80% of your results come from just 20% of your efforts. So the key is to identify that crucial 20% and really hone in on it.
So it's about identifying what really moves the needle and focusing your energy there.
Exactly. And the beauty of this principle is that it applies to so many areas of life. Think about it in terms of your to-do list. Which tasks on that list will have the biggest impact on your goals? Or in a business context, which clients or products are the real moneymakers?
Okay, I'm starting to see how this could be a game changer. So we've identified our high impact 20%. What's next? How do we make the most of it?
Well, that's where things get interesting. Ferriss talks about outsourcing and delegation as a way to free up your time and energy.
Wait, so I can just hand off all those tasks I dread to someone else. Tell me more.
It's not magic, but it can feel like it. Think about it. You focus on what you excel at, what falls within your 20%, and let others handle the rest.
Okay, I'm liking where this is going, but how do you actually make that happen? I mean, are we talking like hiring a personal assistant or something?
Not necessarily. It could be as simple as hiring a virtual assistant to manage your inbox or schedule appointments. Or you could outsource specific skills to freelancers on platforms like Upwork or Fiverr.
Upwork, Fiverr, I've heard of those, but I'll be honest, the idea of handing over control like that makes me a little nervous. How do you know you're finding the right people? What if they mess things up?
That's a valid concern. And Ferriss addresses it. He gives specific tips on how to find reliable freelancers, write clear job descriptions, and set realistic expectations. It takes a little effort up front, but the payoff in terms of time and mental freedom can be huge.
Okay, so we're delegating tasks, reclaiming our time. This is all starting to come together. But what about those mini retirements we talked about? How do those fit into the picture?
It's about using that time intentionally, to recharge, explore your passions, maybe even learn a new skill.
So it's not just about escaping to a beach for a month, although that does sound pretty tempting right now.
It could be, but Ferriss wants you to think bigger. What if you spent a month in Italy learning to cook like a local or finally writing that novel you've always dreamed of?
Now you're talking my language. Okay, I'm getting that adventurous itch Ferris always talks about. But let's be real, for most of us, dropping everything and just jetting off isn't exactly realistic.
Yeah.
So how do we make mini retirements work in the real world?
It starts with a shift in perspective, I think. A mini retirement doesn't have to be this big, expensive trip. It could be a week off to explore a new hobby, work on a creative project, or even just disconnect and recharge.
Right, it's about incorporating more intentional breaks into our lives, whatever that looks like for each of us.
Exactly. Now, I know this all sounds great in theory, but how do we actually put these principles into practice? That's the real question, isn't it?
It is, because reading about a 4-hour work week and actually living it, well, those are two very different things.
Absolutely. So let's break it down, starting with the Pareto principle. We talked about identifying your high-impact 20%, but how do you actually figure out what that is?
That's always been the tricky part for me. I feel like I'm constantly busy, but sometimes I wonder, what am I really accomplishing?
Ferriss suggests cracking your time for a week or two. Just write down everything you do and how long you spend on it. You might be surprised by what you discover.
Time tracking. Honestly, I've always avoided it like the plague, but you're right. What gets measured gets managed.
Exactly. Once you see where your time is actually going, you can start identifying those activities that are truly moving the needle for you and which ones are just energy vampires.
And that's where outsourcing comes in. We can hand off those energy-draining tasks to someone else, someone who actually enjoys them.
Yeah. Exactly. Remember those platforms we talked about, Upwork and Fiverr? Think about some specific tasks you could outsource. Say you're drowning in emails. Hiring a virtual assistant to manage your inbox, even for a few hours a week, could free up so much of your time and mental energy.
And what about those bigger projects like redesigning your website or writing marketing copy?
That's where a platform like Upwork can be really valuable. You can find freelancers with all sorts of skills and expertise. And Ferriss has some great advice in the book on writing effective job descriptions, screening candidates, even managing projects remotely.
So we're identifying our 20%, outsourcing the rest, and then it's time to plan that mini retirement. I'm ready to book a flight.
Hold your horses. Remember, it all starts with figuring out what truly excites you. What have you always wanted to do but told yourself you didn't have the time or the resources?
What have I always wanted to do? Let me think. Okay, honestly, I've always wanted to learn how to sail. There's something about being out of the open water that just seems so peaceful, exhilarating.
That's fantastic. So how could you turn that dream into a mini retirement experience?
Well, I guess I could start by taking some sailing lessons, maybe even rent a sailboat for a week and try to navigate myself around a local lake.
Exactly. And the key is to actually schedule it in. Put it on your calendar, like an important meeting you can't miss. Don't let it get lost in the daily shuffle.
Okay, time blocked, mini retirement booked. What could possibly go wrong?
Well, it wouldn't be a proper deep dive if we didn't at least acknowledge the elephant in the room. I mean, there are potential challenges to adopting this 4-hour workweek lifestyle, right?
I knew it was too good to be true.
Not necessarily, but it's important to be realistic. Some people argue this only works for entrepreneurs or people with a certain level of financial freedom.
Yeah, I can see that. Not all of us can just pack up our laptops and work from a beach in Bali.
And you're right, it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. But remember, Ferriss acknowledges that. He says these are principles, not rigid rules. You have to adapt them to your own situation, your own goals.
So it's more about adopting the mindset of the 4-hour work week,
Mhm.
even if we can't, perfectly replicate it in our own lives.
Exactly. It's about taking control of your time, figuring out your priorities, and designing a life that aligns with your values, whether you're an entrepreneur, an employee, or somewhere in between.
That's good to hear. But what about the practical stuff? I'm thinking about health insurance, saving for retirement, just the general security of a steady paycheck.
All valid concerns. And Ferriss doesn't shy away from them. He actually dedicates a whole section of the book to addressing these issues. He talks about strategies for navigating health insurance, investing for the future, even negotiating with your employer for more flexibility.
So there are answers out there, or at least potential solutions to these challenges.
Absolutely. But it's not always easy. It takes effort, research, a willingness to think outside the box. But the rewards, in terms of freedom, fulfillment, really living life on your own terms, can be worth it.
This has been so insightful. I'm starting to see the 4-hour work week not as this unattainable fantasy, but as a set of principles I can actually apply to my own life, one step at a time, right?
That's the idea. It's a journey, not a race. You start small, experiment a bit, find what works for you.
And maybe, just maybe, we'll all be sipping those margaritas on a beach someday.
Well, we can certainly dream. And speaking of dreams, there's one more powerful concept from the book we should talk about: dreamlining.
Dreamlining. Okay, that's a new one. What's that all about? Dreamlining. So we're talking what? Like designing your ideal day. I'm intrigued. But how detailed are we talking? Give me the nitty-gritty.
Ferriss says, go specific. Don't just say, I want to travel more. Picture yourself waking up in a Tuscan villa, enjoying a leisurely breakfast overlooking rolling hills, maybe spending the afternoon exploring a vineyard. See the difference?
Okay, Tuscan Villa Vineyard, you've got my attention. But seriously, how does just imagining this stuff actually get us closer to, making it happen?
It's about mindset. You shift from someday, maybe, to why not now? By really visualizing that ideal day, you're way more likely to take steps to make it real. It's like,
Planting a seed.
yeah, exactly. You plant that seed, then give it what it needs to grow.
I like that analogy. Makes sense. But what about folks who aren't even sure what their ideal day looks like? Where do they start with this dreamlining thing?
Good question. Ferriss has some thought-provoking questions in the book to get you started, like think about how you'd spend your time if you had complete freedom. What activities light you up, give you that sense of, this is it? Who would you be with?
Yeah, those are good ones to ponder. And I guess that's the beauty of it, right? There's no right or wrong answer. It's about designing a day that truly fits your values, your aspirations, all that.
Precisely. And it doesn't have to happen overnight. Think of it as a roadmap, a vision to guide you. It's a process, you know?
For sure. Well, this has been an incredible deep dive, I have to say. I feel like I've gained a whole new perspective on, well, everything work, life, the whole shebang.
It's empowering, isn't it? It's not just about escaping the 9 to 5, but about taking the reins and building a life that truly resonates with you. And the best part is, you don't have to wait for retirement to start living that way.
Absolutely. So for anyone listening who's feeling stuck, who's craving more freedom, more fulfillment, what's the one thing you hope they take away from this?
You have the power to change your story. Don't be afraid to question things, to experiment, to build the life you envision. It's out there.
I love that. You heard it here first, folks. Take control, challenge the norms, design your dream life, and who knows, maybe we'll all be hanging out in that Tuscan villa sooner than we think. Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey into the 4-hour work week. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep reaching for those dreams.